And then she was like, yeah, so I went back and looked at the books, and we had 5 different accounts, and there were 5 checks written for weird amounts, but they all added up to $1 million. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
so odd. I wonder what it could have been.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched 8mm.
So I have a very distinct memory of walking into the living room late at night, not too late, and my dad watching a movie. And on the screen, I see Nicolas Cage and James Gandolfini. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, it's 8mm. You have to leave the room. And I think like and I like for sure remember James Gandolfini in it. And so I was probably like 12 at the time. You know, this would have been late 1999, early 2000 when he was watching this at home. And that's like late into the movie when James Gandolfini. So he'd already seen a lot of sick shit in this movie, and he was like, "You have to get out of here right now because I don't know
Right.
what's going to happen."
Right.
And I did not watch this movie until probably 2 years ago. And it's been a little bit, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty sick movie. But then watching it again now, preparing for this,
You found yourself weirdly turned on.
it's rough. It's like really like, and it's kind of amazing that a movie like this exists.
That is so interesting you say that, because I have kind of the opposite reaction to this. Even your like little story in the beginning, I remember when I was younger, this was just on TV. Like this was on HBO or Cinemax or what's the other one? Showtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was on, and I caught it in the middle, and I didn't remember catching this in the middle until about maybe 20-30 minutes into this movie. And I realized this was like him trying to track down a snuff film. And I was like, I've seen a film where this guy, who looks surprisingly a lot like Nicolas Cage, tries to track down a snuff film and ends up in this like cellar, and he's like against like 3 guys and one's wearing a mask. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's this movie, but I also have like, it's just this one scene is in my memory bank. And so I looked it up. I was like, I go to Google it, and I was like, movie about snuff film. Apparently, this is the only movie ever created about snuff films. There's one called like Megan is Missing, but that was so new that was like no way that it could have been it. So I was like, this is the only movie except one that was made 2 years ago about snuff films.
Right.
And good, first of all. Oh, well, I should also put like a widely accepted movie about snuff films. I'm sure there's like some weird Russian underground film about it, right? But like American widely accepted movie about snuff.
Maybe
I'm
like a Serbian film or something like that. Something from that country.
Yeah, maybe a film called the Serbian film. Seen Martyrs. Anyways, I'm getting off subject. The point is that I finally get to the scene in the movie, and it was nothing like how I remembered it. I was like, oh my God. Like now I have like all the context and everything like that. But I had no idea who James Gandolfini was when I first saw it. And I barely remembered it being Nicolas Cage. And I had no idea Joaquin Phoenix was in it. And so,
yeah, my memory of James Gandolfini was he was working in like a sex shop. Like it was like,
it's like you mixed up the Joaquin Phoenix character.
Yeah, completely. But I remember
yeah.
James Gandolfini for sure. And this like might be one of my first memories of him as an actor too.
So you watched The Sopranos and you were like, wait, Tony Soprano into snuff? I don't get it. The build of Machine and James Gandolfini is kind of similar. So I was like, wait, is he Machine? Like, how is this going down? And he escapes in that scene, and James Gandolfini is like chasing him down with a gun and shooting the back of his car. And that's the last thing I remember. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I changed the channel at that point. I was like, boring, whatever. Um, but then with all this in context, I was like, this is a really high tension movie. And it is kind of funny how all the people except Joaquin Phoenix, right? But all the people that he tracks down all have something to do with the 8mm film.
Yeah. I think one of the strongest things about this movie is that the detective work actually just makes sense. It uses technology that seems legitimate, and it doesn't seem like he's ever just gets lucky.
One of the smoothest things that happens in this movie is where he calls Gandolfini and he says, "Hey, I know what you did to that girl. We know what you did, and we're gonna get you, and you're not gonna get away with it." And then he hangs up, and then he just follows the trail that James Gandolfini lays down.
Well, because this is my point, is the kind of when I noticed is that he's tapped him, and so James Gandolfini immediately calls, and so to get that number, he uses this thing that like recognizes the dial, like the tone of the different keys on the phone, the different numbers. So he's able to figure out what the number is, and then use that to figure out what that was. And it's like
With a little something called a phone book.
uh yeah, the white pages. No, but I'm talking about the device that like figured out which key was what. Like which,
No,
because each
I know.
number
But
made a different.
once you have that number, you got to track it to a name, which he did easily.
Yeah, but my point is like I was just like, oh, that like logically just makes sense, and that's not like just some like fucking device that you're like, oh shit, like, oh, that just doesn't even exist, but it like breaks open the case. You're like, maybe that doesn't exist, but that easily could, right? That easily could have something that just like, because those are distinct sounds. So I just was
So
like, I was kind of impressed with that aspect of like the police work was really good.
no, it was except for the fact that he did not see how suspicious that lawyer was, because
Well, and
at
that's
first
actually
glance I was like, that dude's up to something.
Well, that's actually kind of the flaw of the film, and it's just because of who that guy is. That actor always plays a smarmy guy who's like in on it. Or like, he was in A Time to Kill, right? And he's the kind of the asshole expert witness for the prosecution. He's the doctor in Hannibal Lecter who's like an asshole to Hannibal Lecter, so Hannibal's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, in Silence of the Lambs, I think. Or the other one. So it's just like, it's kind of the flaw is that you're like, you see that guy and you're like, his part isn't just like a lawyer part, right? Who's in it for like 5 seconds and he was like a liaison. Like, he is involved. And so that's kind of the only issue. And then because then when you see Nicolas Cage being followed both times, I was like, oh, it's a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like because
Oh yeah, because who else would it be except when Peter Stormare was like, has the jump on him, and I was like, was it one of James Gandolfini guys from like the agency? And what's funny too is like Peter Stormare is such a character actor, because it's like you see him at playing the devil in Constantine, and he doesn't look anything like this. Like, he's clean shaven, he has blonde hair, right? And it's like, but he looks different in every role, but he is so distinctive in just his aura. That sounds kind of weird, but Peter Stormare just has a presence about him, and it's always like an evil fucking presence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or like,
Was he one of the guys in John Wick?
yeah, he's
Yeah, he was the main guy.
no, well, he's in John Wick 2, and he has a very small part where he's like, they've stolen his car again, I think. I don't remember. He's just in John Wick 2 in a very small part in the beginning, and then John Wick comes to like get his car again, and he's like, no hard feelings, man. Just take your fucking car and like get out of here. So I think we can get started, because I think there are a bunch of things that come up as we do this. There is one thing I want to say, and we never do this, but I was looking at the Metascore for this, and it's a 21. And I was like, that seems really low, because I actually think this is a pretty decent, down the middle, a little bit better than I expected movie. There are, just in this little bit, there are 4 people that gave this a 0. I just think it's funny that, like, you see some of the other reviews are, like, in the 40s, and then there's a 70, and that sort of, like, makes a bit more sense, right? But then there's just some people that just, like, the subject matter of this, they're just like, "Fuck it. That is a real film, like, people shouldn't see it." And it's obviously, like, because the subject matter. And then the other thing, and I'm not sure if you were aware of this, so the person who wrote this is Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven, and has worked with Fincher on a bunch of other stuff. He just wrote The Killer. But, like, the idea that the person who wrote Seven also wrote this
Yeah.
completely makes sense. And then apparently he sort of disavowed this movie because they had to tone it down to even get it made.
Okay, so this is kind of a perfect segue into my thoughts on this movie. I know you said we're gonna get into it, but when do we have this chance? I could see people giving this a 0 or a very low score, even though it's like a decently well-made movie. Because I feel like for a subject matter like this, you either have to go 110% into it, or why even bother at all? And I felt like they were holding back in some parts of it. And I was just like, well, why? What at this point, why are you like not just balls to the walls, just go in on it? And it felt like restrained. It felt like, oh, snuff films 101 for like 8th graders.
It's because you couldn't get it R rating otherwise. So they rewrote it to get it down to an R rating, and even doing that, it was still NC-17, and they had to go through 4 or 5 rounds of cuts to get the R rating. So it's like, to
Yeah.
get this as a major motion picture, I mean, that's why you had to. But I honestly think, like, it's still pretty fucking awful.
No, of course, but also the realm of like picking like, okay, we're not going to focus on like child pornography. We're not going to focus on like rape. We're going to specifically focus on snuff films as being like the worst of the worst. And then it's like, yeah, in the movie it says like, yeah, I don't think that's a thing. I don't think it's a myth, it's a legend. It's not like really existing. And it's like, so, but it's in the realm of possibilities to do all of this other heinous stuff, but killing someone and filming it is out of the question. It just felt kind of like weird how they were framing it.
I think it's just because it's not something, like, as underground as these people were, they're still, like, trying to make a living doing this thing. So they're just like, people wouldn't do that. Like, you can't, like, a lot of the times Joaquin Phoenix's character was like, oh, this is towing the line of legality, right? It's pushing the edge. But if you just murder people, then it's like you're a murderer, right? I will say that, like, I had a similar thought, but it was just the idea of, like, that's a myth. And it's like, there's billions of people in the world. Like, it just has to have happened once that someone killed someone on camera
Right.
with sexual motivation. Like, saying it's a myth, it's like, well, you just haven't found it yet. Like, it probably exists.
Look, we're millennials. We've been on 4chan. We know.
I don't think I know.
We know.
No,
We know the
you speak
terrorist
you
tapes.
speak you speak for yourself. I will say that, like, watching this now with, like, the access to the internet, it's just like all of that shit a 12-year-old could just find at any point in time.
100%. And I
Not
think
even,
that
like, you don't even have to go to the dark web to find that shit. You can
no.
just like, you can just Google search or use a different engine and easily find the grossest, most heinous
Most
shit.
vile shit ever.
And
Yeah.
and maybe not an actual murder, but you can have people like pretending, like an act. You can have, like, simulated snuff films. It's just like, that shit is so fucking readily available, and it's just crazy.
One
Like,
of the funniest scenes in this movie is when they're watching that snuff film that they got for like $1,000 or whatever, and I think it was like a couple, right? And they were like, "Wait, no, that's the same. That's the same girl. That's the same girl."
Snuff film 2, The Resurrection. He's like, I
Um,
think I think that's Filipino. So let's just get started. It starts with just, like, presenting Nicolas Cage as a, it's like whenever you have these type of films, you have like the opening scene where he's on like a different PI case,
Yeah.
right? Just to kind of establish who he is. And then we get to see Catherine Keener again, same haircut as being John Malkovich. Slightly different character. I will say, like, her,
It is kind of crazy. It's the same year. It's like she walked off one set into the other.
yeah. And I was thinking, like, her character is a bit like she's kind of like the nosy, like overbearing, getting into her husband's business wife. Like a lot of her actions in the beginning are just like, why is she like kind of written that way? You know what I
I
mean?
agree with you. There's a part in the movie where she was like questioning where he's been, and he's like, get to the place. I think it ends up being like a lake house or something, right?
Right, right, right.
And she's like stalling. She's like, what? Just tell me where you were. I'm like, dude, you know what your husband does for a living. You know he must be messing with some dangerous people. Like, shut the fuck up and get to where he's telling you to get.
I think her reactions towards the end of the movie make a little more sense, but like in the beginning, he's like, "Oh, he puts the gun in the car." She's like, "Why do you need the gun?" He's like, "It's just for protection. I probably won't need it." She's like, "Well, then don't take it." And it's like, "But why?"
But why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, I forget what it was. She was like, that was like right after the scene where she's like, "Oh, I know you're smoking it," and then she like starts searching his desks and finds cigarettes, and then looking through other stuff. And I'm just like, that character is a little bit like, I actually like the family dynamic that they're creating where it's like it's showing his descent, right? Into
Mhm.
this world and like how it's affecting him. I think it could have been written a little bit better.
I thought a couple of things I felt like they were setting up and never paid off is the gun in the trunk, and he takes it with him and he immediately gets it taken away from him. I was like, how cool would it have been if James Gandolfini follows him to the trunk, he leaves the gun in the trunk, and then he pulls it on James Gandolfini out there, right?
You love to fucking rewrite movies.
And then the other thing was is that his smoking never really becomes a problem for him.
Well, no, the smoking is a symptom of like her not sort of trusting his judgment because it's like, why are you lying about that? You know what? Like one, you shouldn't be doing it, but two, like you're lying about that, so like I can't really trust you on these other things when you're lying about this kind of smaller thing. So I
Could
mean,
you
that part makes sense.
could you imagine the lawyers, like you're the lawyer in this situation, and this guy just died? You know, there's a snuff film in his safe behind his portrait, and the snooping widow finds it, like has it jammed open, finds it, hires a PI to find out who it is, and you're all the while sitting behind her like, oh, fucking shit.
You should have had another 35 millimeter like in your jacket, and it's like a home video, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll play it. I know how to do this." And like, I'll set it up for you, and then fucking pocket it. Like this movie should have been 5 minutes long of him just like sneaking out the movie, or
I
like
do.
on when the husband's on the deathbed, be like, "Hey, remember that fucking snuff film? Can we like hide that now since you're dying? You want to watch it one more time?"
Well, I jerk you off.
I love that part. He's like, did you fucking have his dick in your hand? Were you jerking him off while he watched it? So
That was
anyway,
good.
he gets called into this, and it starts off. She's like, we found a film in here. I love the lawyer's description of it. Begins as a relatively sleazy bit of porn. It's just like a funny way to put it. And then
But also, it doesn't. It shows this like scared little girl in like a
clearly drugged up
clearly drugged up
with the
in like
dude in masks.
this horrible like location, and I'm like, what kind of porn were you watching? I guess we know.
Yeah, and then they tell him to watch it, and he watches it. Cage's reaction to the snuff film are at the same time overacting and underacting.
Yeah, but then again, like, how would you react?
Um, I had the thought of like a fucking YouTube reacts channel of just like, what the fuck? Oh my god, like just overdoing it with the video, but like,
Can you believe they did that?
oh, is that fake blood? I don't know.
Like and subscribe.
And then, she's like, we're not taking this to the cops at all. This is the fucking reason I called you, Nicolas Cage. And she's like, I need you to know. And one of my favorite lines in the beginning of this is the lawyer's like, I need to know that you won't copy the film. And the way he's like, you have my word on that. And he's like, I don't fucking want to. Like, why would I want a copy of this?
Yeah, but he should have for insurance purposes. And the thing you said about Nicolas Cage's reaction about being over and underacting at the same time, there's actually a lot of points in this movie where I feel Nicolas Cage's acting is like it's missing something. It's not where it needs to be. Like I don't usually watch a movie and I'm like, meh, this reaction is taking me out of it. But I watched this movie and there's a couple times Nick Cage's character, I'm just like, what is he doing?
Yeah, I can see that. There's a little bit of times where it's like, well, so he does. There's this point right here where he goes home, and his baby daughter is just in the crib, and he goes to look at her, and she's just fucking staring at him creepily. Which they then, I'm pretty sure, use that exact same shot when he goes home at the end of the film, and the daughter's just staring at him creepily again, and he starts bawling, like breaking down and crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
one of the
And the
moments
way
where, like,
he's like holding her and like gyrating, like bouncing her up and down vigorously. I don't know.
so then we get sort of a montage of him. He goes to this like Cleveland place, like for missing persons, and he's just like, I just got to go through the fucking photos from like 7 years ago. And then he also figures out that the film, I mean, this is a little bit of a fortuitous break, but the film is the certain kind that they stopped making 7 years ago. So it has to be, and like this would have been a one of a kind film, meaning like it was, the husband paid to have it made if it is real.
I also love how like if you watch this film or if you like look at it through the light and you hold it up to the light, it's grainy as shit. But when he plays it in the this is so funny to me. When he plays it in the projector room of the widow's house, it's like there's not a single ounce of grain on it. It's like clear 4K. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like
Shot digitally. Yeah.
it's like the T2 cut. So, he then finds the picture of the girl, and I'm like, that doesn't look anything like that girl. Like those,
I would not have recognized her.
I would not have stopped on that photo and been like, this is her. There was actually a girl right before that one. I was like, oh, that looks like her. But he just skips over that and he's like, nah, this is her. It was like, all right, maybe, I guess.
Imagine if it wasn't. Imagine like this whole movie he's chasing the wrong girl, but yet somehow he still
It's a
gets
second snuff film.
Yeah.
It's like, these fucking things are finding them like, anyway, wildfires.
I found another billionaire who paid another $1 million for one.
So he goes to the mom and they fought all the time. Just the classic, like a person who would have ran away.
It reminded me of 3 Billboards where she told her to go like fuck herself and then she died. And it's like, yeah, she ran away because I slapped her, you know?
He finds the girl's diary in the toilet 7 years later. Now that I said that the detective work is pretty great, there are some things, but there are a lot of good things too.
So he covers that up, right? He explains that by saying that because it's a runaway case, the cops never looked into it. But then it questions, okay, hold on. Now that I'm like talking it out loud, it's like unveiling some things. So I'm realizing a lot of things here. Remember how fucking disgusting and dirty that bathroom was?
Uh-huh.
So I was like, my toilet jams, like I'm not all the time, but like at least once a year, right? Surely my toilet would go bad in 7 years, and
In
I would
7 years, you would take the back of the toilet off,
unless she's never been back in there,
unless she's not using it because there's 2 toilets. You're thinking like there's a different side of the house.
or like if it would that and it's her bathroom and she doesn't even want to step foot in it because it reminds her too much of her, and so she just lets that bathroom go to absolute shit, you know?
So he then goes back. First of all, Norman Reedus sighting.
Yep.
And I love when he like gets like there's this kind of this subtlety of like he's growing attached to this girl that he saw like to this mystery, and Norman Reedus is talking shit about her, and then he's like, "Can I have a cigarette?" And he just fucking throws his used one on the ground and is like, "Nah, fuck you."
This Norman Reedus looks incredibly like a lot younger than Boondock Saints Norman Reedus, especially for it coming out in the same year.
Yeah, no, I agree. He then goes back to the mom and like, would you want to know if she's alive or dead? And she's like, obviously I want to fucking know. And I feel like there's a version of this movie where he's single and they like almost like bang right here. You know what I mean? Like she's like put on a little bit of makeup. She's cooking dinner for two. Like she's
It's
definitely like
it's too much
lonely.
of a weird situation for that though, like a weird question. Like especially how he sets it up. He's like, "But if you really had to know,
Yeah.
if you really had to know if she what happened to her, or you just live in this fantasy world where you never find out." She's like, "I want to know." He's like, "All right, you want to bang?"
She wanted to. So then he goes to LA and there's just a montage of him going around. I like looked up what the song was because like, oh, I like this song. It's like this weird kind of Middle Eastern vibe. It's called Hollywood. And I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that's a weird name for it. But it's because it's like made for the movie. It's like a score. And I guess the guy who composed it went to Morocco to like get a bunch of sounds for the movie. And like that's what he chose, which is a very odd
Yeah.
like decision, but I actually really liked it.
It works. It works.
And
So,
then
yeah.
we meet Joaquin, Max, California.
Not a typical Joaquin Phoenix role.
It's actually considering like a very normal role for him, all things
Right.
like what his
Right?
career is.
Yeah.
Um,
This
yeah,
must have been, do you know when Signs was put out?
I think like 2002 probably.
Yeah, so this was pre-Signs.
So I mean, it's a year before Gladiator 2000, and then yes, Signs 2002. I just pulled that straight out of my ass, but I was right. But yeah, this is like I guess now seeing Joaquin Phoenix movies, like he just does a lot of like weird stuff. Back then, this is kind of more in line with just like normal movies that he would do, right? So, um,
But also this is like one of the most normal roles in the movie. Like, yeah, he's the cashier at a sex shop, but it's not like he's a weirdo or anything.
just trying to move those battery operated vaginas as best he can. You know, the boss
I
wants
do
to
like the
move.
backstory as like he has a band.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? That's why everyone moves there. And then I, it's this little scene after this where he's just watching the film, and I'm like, what the fuck are you like watching this for? And he's even like the wife calls while she's holding the baby, and he's like talking to her while he's watching the snuff film. But then he sees like a third guy in the video, right? He sees something.
Oh, I thought he noticed the satanic star tattoo first.
That's later on.
Yeah.
So he notices like something in the background. He takes it to this Photoshop, and they're like, "We put 137 hours into this, used everything we have, and then here's the back of this dude's head." And one thing I will say, so like it's the back of Gandolfini's head, right? The acting on Gandolfini at the end, they didn't make him just like a monster who's like, I fucking jerked off to this girl dying. You could tell from his acting, like he wasn't exactly in on this, right? But he needed the money. But it doesn't exonerate him because he like wasn't enjoying it. He still was there, and he's like he helped murder this woman, right? But he is like even he is like kind of gulping. He's like describing it until like he gets this tough guy attitude of like, "Fuck you, what are you gonna kill me? Like fuck you, yeah, we killed her, like you like pussy." But like you can tell in when he's telling him the story, he's like not exactly like it's not a happy memory for him either. And so like the fact that the camera shows the back of his head, it's like he was looking away.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I miss James Gandolfini.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe not for roles like this, but
but any role. I mean, he was so busy doing The Sopranos for so many years, but him and True Romance was good. Like he's just kind of like that one of those actors that it's like you see him in a movie and you're like, ooh, kind of character is he playing?
yeah. So then he gets Joaquin Phoenix to help him, and we get a whole nother like montage of places they go. Um, there is this one line from Joaquin Phoenix, which is like basically sums up the movie, right? And he's like, "Dance with the devil don't change, the devil changes you," and that is literally the thesis of this movie. Of like, you're not going to change this like underworld, right? You're not going to. I mean, he makes a dent because he kills all the people responsible, but it's like you're being affected by this. Like this is like a disease that's leeching onto you in your life. So he goes to these like this Mexican porn place, basically. This
Yeah,
like it's just, and then
it's like a porn farmers market almost.
but also with like what look to be prostitutes, or maybe they'll just make the videos right there. It's like that Family Guy joke where like, the cops break in, you're under arrest for prostitution. He's like, it's not prostitution. We're filming it. It's porn. They're like, oh, okay. Well, that makes it fine then.
Yeah.
But then just Joaquin's like, películas de snuff? And they're like, what the fuck did you just ask? And then to get out of this situation, Nicolas Cage is like, I'll just give you guys money. And they're like, all right, you can leave. You can leave. We'll let you live. But like, get the fuck out of here. Don't ask for that shit here.
What's kind of also funny is it's like you're looking for snuff films, we'll fucking kill you right here on the spot if you're looking for a film about fucking killing you.
Yeah, we don't like that shit, but we'll do it. But we won't film it. So then they go to the next place, and there's just a fucking sign that says kids, right? And you're like, oh, that's fucking disgusting. And then there's like fucking bestiality. There's like all sorts of crazy
This
shit.
is the shit I mean. So you're saying it's like too far out of the realm of like you have all these videos of kid pornography, bestiality, whatever. And then like were you ever like that teenage boy who like got on the internet and found like what is it, like genital mutilation videos?
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
No.
well, I was hanging with a rough group of kids.
Yeah, maybe don't share too much.
we anyways, you could find it like you said before, you could find this all shit on 4chan and stuff, but it's just so crazy how they're like, even Joaquin Phoenix is like in the front of the child porn. He's like, this is teetering on legality. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure this is just fucking worse than killing someone.
He wasn't talking about that. And no, I don't want to have a fucking ranking chart of whether child pornography or murder or rape is worse, Alon. I don't think that's like a good use of our time.
This is what our podcast is about.
By the end, let's rank them. I do find it funny that after seeing this, they go over to this guy, and it's way beyond XXXXX. Buy 5, get 1 free. You're just like, what the fuck kind of place is this? They're just like, if you get 5 of my weird shit, you can get a free one.
And then just like they show some of the stuff, right? And it's just like this like dark, it's like 2 girls spanking a guy. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
One dude, one of them had the guy with like, he was like tied down and his ass was in the air and she was about to like stick something in him. And she was wearing a nurse's outfit with like just the boobs cut out.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same, like, I think the movie is like, you have to know, like it alludes to the crazy shit, but it can't just fucking show you the crazy shit.
No, I'm not asking it to
it
show.
Seems like you are. You're like, hey, where's the genital mutilation scene? Is that what you're asking for?
No, I'm just saying that it's treating it like no one has ever sold or dealt with snuff films in this underground Mexican child pornography business, but they do all this other stuff and it's perfectly fine.
We did not see child porn in the Mexican porn shop.
You get what I'm saying, though.
That was just prostitution, probably. So after this, there's this scene where he's talking to Max, and he's like, Max is basically like, listen, I'm just doing this for money because I make more money doing this. He's sort of ambivalent about everything. But then he turns it back on Nicolas Cage. And he's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you have a wife and kids. Like, why are you doing this? And I did skip over the scene with like the fucking Scandinavian dude who was like, he's like, you said 1,000. He's like, but now I say 1,200. I raised the price. You get mad, but you're still going to pay me the $1,200. And then, yeah, it's just the 2 fake snuff films, which you're kind of happy it's fake, obviously. He finds the home where Mary lived for a month, and then he finds the phone number lead, and that leads to James Gandolfini.
The convent with the nuns?
Yes.
Yeah,
where she stayed. And this is another interesting thing. He goes to James Gandolfini, and he's like, do you recognize this girl? And James Gandolfini stares at that picture for so fucking long that you're like, oh, yeah, he knows her.
Yeah.
Absolutely, like, no chance. He's like, no, I said no. And then we see that he's still being followed, and then he... Do you
know how much fucking pussy comes through these doors daily?
Why were you doing like a Mexican cholo accent for James Gandolfini?
Because I can't do an Italian mob accent.
Maybe you should have worked on it beforehand if you were going to try. You don't just fucking workshop these on the pod. So he
That's all we
taps,
do.
he taps, yeah, at the end. He taps the phone and he's just listening to it. There's this one disgusting scene where like James Gandolfini is about to get a BJ from this girl. Like, I guess it's like this is her audition. And he like closes the blinds.
In the porn world, it's called a casting couch.
There's no couch. She was just on the ground. He follows to James Gandolfini's house as they're about to film. And then James Gandolfini, like, I guess, can afford armed guards to, like,
Dude, this is actually crazy because he spies in on a porno being made live right there.
he'll
And then
pay for
this
that.
this guy comes out. He's like, "Hey, you!"
The guy
over
did
there."
what now?
Came all over out. And I love the whole like throwing him into like the shallow pool.
Oh, definitely broke his fucking legs. Like, no, he totally broke his fucking legs, like, landing like that. And then, like, kind of he's like, this is taking too long. So he calls James Gandolfini and he's like, I fucking know what you did. And as we said, traces the call and gets a Dino Velvet is the name of this porn producer.
It's actually kind of crazy because you have Max California, Dino Velvet, Machine.
Not
Do-
even
do-
the machine. It's not the machine.
No,
It's
it's
machine.
Machine. One word like Beyonce.
Yeah.
And do you remember James Gandolfini's name?
Eddie
Yeah.
Poole.
Eddie Poole. Yeah.
And that guy broke his legs in the pool. So I do love too. He asks Max California, and he's like, "Yeah, he's the Jim Jarmusch of S&M." Just like that's such a fucking funny way to say it. And then he's like, if you're gonna go to New York, you'll need me, but I only fly first class. And then we're in New York, and there's this funny bit too where he's like, Joaquin's filming. He's like, "This is the first
Yeah.
time I've been in the Big Bad Apple," and he's like, "Don't film me." And then, like, later on, fucking Dino tries to take his photo. And he's like, "No, you're not taking my photo." Because it's like, I don't want a record of my face. I don't want you
Right.
guys to be able to refer back to something when you're, like, trying to find me. None of you.
So I think some of the worst acting in this movie is done by Nicolas Cage and Joaquin Phoenix, but it's like their characters are trying to act, so I guess it's excusable. It also explains, I mean, the lawyers following them explains it, but it also explains how easily Dino Velvet sees through their ruse is when they're like, he asked them, he's like, "Oh, if you're such big fans of mine," or they tell him, "We're such big fans of yours." Cringe, but whatever. "We're such big fans of yours, of mine. What is your favorite movie?" And Joaquin Phoenix jumps in. He's like, what are his two? Do you remember? It's like
Devil and, like, something else.
Rust or something, like one word.
Yeah.
Devil, yeah. He's like, "Yeah, the moments in Devil really reflect." I'm like, shut the fuck up.
I think at that point, Dino had already been warned by the lawyer.
He's like
just
baiting them, right?
from his acting, you can sort of tell that he was expecting this because you imagine that. Well, actually, you don't even have to imagine. There's a scene right before this where he calls the widow and he's explaining things to her, and then she was like, "Yeah, so I went back and looked at the books, and we had 5 different accounts, and there were 5 checks written for weird amounts, but they all added up to $1 million." It was like, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
so odd. I wonder what it could have been."
Yeah. Yeah, but she couldn't tell you where those were cashed out to? Whatever.
Yeah, so, and then there was a little scene where he's watching a video and he sees a guy with a mask and the tattoo, and then Joaquin's like, "Yeah, that's Machine. He's in all of, most of DV's videos."
And I love it too. He's like, "I do have one request." What do you say? He's like, "One girl has to be white." I don't know why he does this, but he goes, "One girl has to be white, one girl has to be black. And my other stipulation is that you have to have that animal Machine in your video."
And I want to watch.
Oh, that's
your
the
work.
third one, right? That's the third stipulation.
That's the first. Yeah, he's like, "I want a white woman, a black woman, and then I'll leave it up to your je ne sais quoi." And then at this point, Peter Stormare tries to take a photo. You know what's funny though? And this actually doesn't make sense. He's like, "I want to take a photo of your face," and he stops him, But the lawyer could just tell him like who this guy is, right? The lawyer knows who it is, so he doesn't actually need the photo for any purposes, right?
Maybe he
But
just wanted to see how he would react to having his photo taken.
well, he's probably just fucking with him, right? He's like,
But
yeah,
no,
let me just
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
because he doesn't need he has all the information at this point. Um, so he gives Joaquin Phoenix money and a plane ticket, and he's like, "Get the fuck out of here! Like, I don't need you anymore. I need to do this by myself. I need you to forget all of this." And I will say that, like, of a movie that's full of shocking things, this next scene, and specifically Joaquin Phoenix's death, is super shocking. Like when I first saw it a couple years ago when it happened.
Yeah. Although
I
you
look.
don't really see anything.
Now I'm not talking about like gory. I mean just the fact that it happens.
I want to see gore so bad.
You're a fucking psycho, and like I don't know why you're letting people into this side of you. So he shows up for filming day. Hello, machine. Love your work.
See, this is the shit I mean. It's so fucking fake. It's so stupid. It's like just don't say anything. Remember how we watched Venom, and I think Venom's like rated PG-13, but he's like biting the heads off of people, but there's absolutely no blood. Like there's no blood pool or nothing like that.
Right.
That's how I kind of feel about this movie. It's like you're cutting the necks off of people, but there's no blood.
Well, I mean, he cuts the neck, Joaquin Phoenix's neck, and then it cuts away from it, so they barely shows it, right? Like I imagine there's a version of it where you see it and it's pretty gross, but once again, in order to get the movie made, like you have to. What the fuck is wrong with you tonight?
I
Like
no. You're right. You're
I
absolutely
just
right.
for the integrity of it, I really need to see some fucking blood. I need to. I kind of want to. I need to be convinced he's dying. So they basically reveal that this is all a ruse. The lawyer shows up. I do like the line from Peter Stormare when he says, as the lawyer's walking out of the car, he's like, Satan ex machina. It's just like such a fuck, because the movie's like addressing like, yeah, it's just sort of a deus ex machina thing that the lawyer is in on it, but not really. Like you could have figured it out if you were paying attention, but I don't know. I like it's just a kind of a subtle like nod of like maybe you're thinking that this is sort of too convenient.
So just like tapping James Gandolfini's phone and dialing back the number and finding out Dino Velvet, yada yada yada. This part is almost as smooth as that part where Nick Cage goes, and all for $1 million? I can't believe you guys got $1 million to kill this girl. And then they're all like, James Gandolfini's reaction to this is, what the fuck is he talking about? Are you screw me on this?
And then he's like, well, clearly the fucking lawyer is screwing all of us. I mean, that's obviously a fortuitous like circumstance that otherwise Nicolas Cage is dying if he doesn't mention it. And the lawyer didn't screw them out of
I
the
do
money.
enjoy like all the bullets are on the table out of the gun, and as they're distracted by killing each other, he's struggling so hard to get just one bullet in that gun.
Yeah, so the lawyer follows him out there. There is some kind of interesting dialogue where he's like, I never thought you'd get this far. I don't think you're that bright, but like you were able to stumble on this. And then he's like,
That's the scene, by the way. That's the scene that like the one scene that I watched is they're all killing each other with crossbows while Nick Cage is tied to the bed trying to get the bullet from the gun.
and we talked about this earlier though, but did you watch it with him? Did you hold his cock? He's like, or you want to know, the lawyer's like, you want to know why? He bought it because he could. There's no explanation. And that like the movie sort of like hammers that into you as the audience of like, there's no like, this isn't like, you're not looking at like evil embodied. It is, but it's like, it's not a scary monster. It's not some sick fuck. It's just, they're just doing it because they can. Like the
But
machine isn't scary. He's just some dude that lives with his mom who
see,
like,
that's the thing. I think it sets it up with the whole meaning behind the thing. It's like these are just normal fucking people who have so much money they can do whatever they want. And then it hones in on that message by kind of revealing machine.
the idea that Nicolas Cage never made a copy of this film, no other evidence of it existing. It's just fucking. It's like you're not very good at your job. I do like he's like, hey, let Max California go, and then you can do whatever you want to me. Like he's not involved. And Peter Stormare's line, very well, set him free, machine. So fucking cold, like cold blooded.
Do you think that changed when he has the picture of his wife and daughter? Because then he's like, oh, fuck. I can't let them kill me because I have to actually kill all of them right now.
I mean, I think he's like trying to just elongate this as long as he can to give himself an opportunity to get away, right? So, the Peter Stormare shooting him with the crossbow and then immediately getting shot in the neck is awesome. And then he's like, and then they hear the bed tip over, so Machine and Eddie come over, and like he pulls the knife, and then he pulls the thing to stab the machine, not the machine, machine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You can't put the in front of it.
and then Eddie's like, he only has one fucking bullet, so he uses the bullet to get himself out. Is like awesome. And then he gets chased away. Calls the wife, get the fuck out. You gotta run. I don't know why I just
Why?
did Schwarzenegger right
Why?
there.
Where have you been? Why didn't you call?
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, she's obviously upset, and she makes sense that she's upset when he gets there. And she's like, what are you doing? He's like, I have to leave. I have to go take care of this. I forgot in the car as he's driving. First, he calls his wife, and then he calls the widow. He's like, it's real. The tape is real. That little girl was murdered. It's a real film. She's like, oh my. And then when he goes to her house later, and he's like, yeah, she fucking killed herself after that. It's like, she could not handle it. She certainly wasn't going to go to the cops. So, yeah, here's some money. Please leave.
I mixed up who you were talking about for a second because I thought you were talking about Mary's mom, but you're talking about the widow. Yeah, the widow does kill herself. Yeah,
But, like, kind of saw that coming.
you did, but also she didn't really need to, and also she could have been like a really reliable witness. Everyone's dead, so who cares? I guess.
But if you think about what her motivation would be, she's at the end of her life. She lost. Not only did she lose the love of her life, she then found out that he's a fucking psycho who paid for a snuff film. And then she's thinking, like, I'm so close to death. I don't want to live through a police investigation and reporting about my husband, the snuff film purchaser. So it
Yeah,
completely makes sense. And then
yeah,
and also being a rich person, the way she handles her problems is with money. She gives a shit ton of money to the girl's mother that was killed. And then I had this thought, how much money does she give to Nick Cage? It didn't look like that much. It was $100 bills. It looked like maybe 10 grand, but I was like, maybe it could have been up to 100, but it didn't look that thick. But when Nick Cage gives it to his wife, he's like, here's her college fund and more. So I feel like it had to be 100,000.
yeah,
It just
maybe.
didn't look like that much.
Yeah, and nondescript amount of money.
Yeah, but it was enough apparently to pay for college in 1999. So not now. It would not. That'd be like,
$12,000.
yeah, fucking semester. So I mean, she's going to a state school, in-state tuition, for sure.
Yeah.
So oh yeah, there's that one point where he's talking to the machine when he's still has the handcuff on. He's like, take off the mask. The machine just shakes. He's like, take off the fucking mask, and then kicks him in the face. It's so good. Nicolas Cage is like really just like, I need to see Machine's face. Like that's the whole goal for the end of the movie. He's like, I gotta see what you fucking look like.
Well, I
And then
think because he's the one that killed her, right? He's the one who did the deed.
yeah, I mean, I think he blames all of them pretty equally though. Like even the lawyer.
So when he tracks down Machine and he like finds him out to be this George Higgins guy, you remember how he finds his name?
Well, so first, I mean,
Oh, he calls up hospitals.
but he goes to James Gandolfini first, right?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So he goes to James Gandolfini. Who's the machine? I don't know. He lives in New York somewhere. And he's like, show me where you killed her. And then we already talked about Gandolfini's acting in this scene and how it's like he's not just a complete evil monster. He like regrets it, but he's also like he is evil. But it's like he's playing it as like, anyway, a little more nuanced than what you would think. And then he ties him up and he starts calling him a lot of offensive words and like, you're not going to kill me, you fucking pussy. Like you don't have it in you. And he walks away.
Yeah.
Then he calls the mom. He's like, you wanted to know some men have killed her. I want to punish them. Give me permission to hurt them. Tell me that you loved her. As she's just wailing. It's so fucking, that's like the weirdest part of the movie.
It is.
Tell me that you loved your daughter so that I can kill this man. I thought after he pistol whipped Gandolfini that when he started burning him, he was going to be burning him alive. But I think he was dead at that point.
I think the pistol whip killed him. Um,
He
this
used the
movie,
he used the porn to burn him.
yeah. Um, this movie ends like 3 different times.
Yeah, like that scene in the warehouse could have been sort of the final scene, and then he kills James Gandolfini, and then he goes after the machine, and then, like I said, smart
No,
detective.
even after that, he goes
Yeah,
after Machine, and then it's
I
the
got
act. Yeah,
I got a lot of like epilogue talk about that part. But so he calls hospitals up, and he's like, "Hey, guy with a wound." And I was like, "This is very smart detective work." And he immediately finds the guy, finds where he lives, waits for the mom to go. What? She's going on a gambling trip, I think.
no, it's a
Probably.
church meeting.
Oh, gotcha. On a like a little short bus. She leaves. He goes inside with his silenced gun.
Yeah,
The music stops, and it is so fucking. This is a horror movie right here. The
dude,
music
I had
stops,
to
and it's just doing that little
pause.
skipping at the end.
I had to pause multiple times.
You're like, oh fuck! The only reason I didn't pause this time is because I had watched it before. But I was like, oh, even having watched it, I'm like, just fucking jump out. And then the music starts playing again, and you run up there, you fucking idiot. I love the fact that the like machine is like, all right, I got to put my mask on now. I'm gonna kill this guy, but I have to do it with my mask on.
So it is kind of confusing, right? Does he turn the music back on because the record is done? Like the vinyl has played out.
Mm-hmm.
So he checks in the closet, and then when he runs back on, he sees that the music is on and the closet door is open. I was like, was he hiding in the closet and Nick just did not see him?
I think what you're supposed to believe, or at least my opinion, was that machine was probably like in another room or something. Walks back in, see the closet open. He's heard him. Maybe he heard him in the beginning and he stopped it. I don't know, but I think he puts the record on to draw him back up there. Is what I take.
Yeah. And he is the fucking, there's a lot of points in this movie that remind me of other movies, and I don't know if it's like, well, the first one is in James Gandolfini's house when he kicks the guy in the pool. It reminds me of that scene in Roadhouse, the new Roadhouse, where he kicks him in the pool, drowns him in the pool.
He broke that dude's fucking neck.
Or that.
Jake G don't play.
And when Machine kicks Nick Cage out of the second story floor, it reminded me of Unbreakable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean it's on. It's like it's just a straight horror movie, right?
But
It's
his
like
mom's house
Leatherface.
backs up to the graveyard.
So apparently Joel Schumacher was driving like to go to the set location for the mansion for the widow and the guy that bought the snuff film, and on the way drove by this house and was like, "That's fucking perfect." And it was a house abutting up to a graveyard. Yeah, he just like throws him out, and then he lands on the ground. The gun lands behind a grate, and the machine jumps out, and the fucking just structure just collapses, and he like falls down too. And then he's like pulls off the mask. And he's like, you thought I'd be a monster, and then he like puts the glasses on. And he's like, my name's Higgins. You know,
It kind of also reminded me of Zodiac a little bit.
yeah. So throws the knife at him, and then there's that whole part where he's like, my favorite part. It's not when they beg. It's not this. It's not that. It's then when you stick the knife in them, and it's the moment of surprise. You're like, holy fuck. And then
And then he goes in. He's like, "My mom, I wasn't beaten or abused or anything.
yeah,
I just like this."
yeah. There's no fucking mystery to this. Yeah, it's all pretty good stuff. And then let's talk about the end. So he stabs Machine, kills him. He then just goes to the hospital with a stab wound. He's left his DNA all over this murder scene, and then goes to a nearby hospital. Like he's clearly gonna get caught.
You could cover it up by saying it rained.
I guess. But what you then can't cover up is he then, when he sent the money to the mother of the dead girl, wrote a letter where he's like, I murdered these people. And she's like, thank you for that.
Yeah, she never told anyone.
It's just like, was you trying to get caught, man? Then he goes home, sees the same creepy baby staring up at him, and then just cries to his wife. And he's like, save me.
So
Save me.
it could have ended in the graveyard scene. Could have ended in the hospital. Could have ended when he was crying to his wife. But it ends like the following month later where he gets the letter in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I was kind of like, is it going to end there? Or am I waiting for like another scene?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so this movie is a lot better than I would have expected, especially given the rating. But there are some 1990s like bullshit going on in it that you're like, all right, like it could have, we didn't need to end it 4 times. We didn't need to have this. We didn't even have that. But overall, like, I'm still pretty impressed by it. However,
Mm,
the first choice to direct this film, can you
Brian De
guess?
Palma.
No.
Ew.
Think about who wrote it.
Oh, Fincher.
David Fincher was the first choice.
Yeah. I was continue on your fun facts. I do want to say though, it would be interesting to get Joaquin Phoenix and Nick Cage in the same room and ask them about this film.
Yeah, I don't know if Joaquin would talk about it. You know what I mean? He's
I don't
kind of
know.
a little bit odd in that respect. So Mark Wahlberg turned down the role of Max California, which is the same year that he was in Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights is 99.
No, Boogie Nights 97. That's right. Yeah, Boogie Nights 97. Magnolia's 99. Good catch. So apparently, Andrew Kevin Walker this same year helped write Sleepy Hollow and came in to work on Fight Club. So
Ah.
three fucking films that he. Bruce Willis turned down the Nicolas Cage part. Eric Roberts, Tommy Lee Jones, Charles Dance, James Woods, Willem Dafoe, and Rutger Hauer were all considered for Dino Velvet. Tommy Lee Jones as Dino Velvet is are we getting like Batman and Robin Tommy Lee Jones?
Who you said Willem Dafoe, right? I would actually imagine what's his name? Who played Zod in Man of Steel? What's his fucking name?
Oh, Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon as Dino Velvet.
Yeah, this is a little earlier, so I don't think it would work. Val Kilmer, Charlie Sheen, John Travolta, Mel Gibson, and Nick Nolte were considered for the lead role. William Friedkin and Paul Verhoeven were considered to direct. And then the last sort of alternate casting that I found interesting. So Russell Crowe agreed to do the film with Joel Schumacher. They're ready to do it. And then Nicolas Cage calls and says, I want to do this movie. And at that time, this is pre-Gladiator, pre-A Beautiful Mind. So they're like, if Nicolas Cage does this movie, instead of being like a small budget, we can make this a huge movie. So they're like, all right, Nicolas Cage, you can do it.
That's a funny train of thought. Oh, but the fact that Joel Schumacher did this too is kind of crazy. It's like it doesn't fit his MO.
Well, I think they had trouble finding a director, and then he had also just come off the Batman movies, and he was just like, I want to do something different. So it's sort of just like one of those perfect
Well, he
storm
did.
things. Yeah, I mean, I don't want Fincher to not do Fight Club to do this, but if he could somehow do both, that would be pretty. Like Fincher's 8mm is just like those. It's made to be, you know what I mean. But also, you saw Seven. I don't know that he's gonna like let the movie be toned down. So then it's like, how's that movie even gonna be fucking made?
Well, that's what I'm saying. But also in today's like day and age, you can get away with a lot more than you could in '99. So all I'm saying is 8mm remake.
Well, so who plays David Harbour's Machine?
No,
Um,
David Harbour's Machine. Okay, Timothy Chalamet is Nick
is Max
Cage.
California? No, Miles Teller is Max California.
Miles Teller hasn't been in anything in like years.
He was just in that little movie called Top Gun Maverick, but yeah. And then
Been years.
the Nicolas Cage part, I mean, that's Jake Gyllenhaal right there. So yeah, that's my movie.
That's your movie, huh? I like I like Jake Gyllenhaal, but I would you know who's my Dino Velvet is Robert Downey Jr.
I mean, he could do it, but there's also just so much Robert Downey baggage that you're like, is if he goes a little too flamboyant with it, it's like becomes comical. So like he's just got to toe that line right. Um, but yeah, I'm not mad about it. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched 8 mm.